Thank you for joining us today for the panel discussion. As you know, it's the last class. We've heard from a lot of other players in the IP ecosystem, and we wanted to end with the panelists who either currently or previously worked with the Fortune 500. Who've got obviously play a hugely driving role in the economy in a variety of different ways, and some of whom have played a bunch of different roles within the IP ecosystem as well, even within the same company. Before we dive into the panel discussion, I was hoping each of the panelists might just give, a 4 or 5 minute sense of how they got to where they are today, what they're working on now, and what companies, which of the Fortune 500 they've been with, in the past. So Bob, maybe I'll ask you to start, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And just introduce yourself by name first. So.
Sure. It's Bob Colao. I'm currently with Radius IP, which is my company that I started about 2.5 years ago. I came into intellectual property by way of engineering degree, engineering background. I started with IBM quite a few years ago, and went back, got my business degree, and then about 2/3 of the way through my career, I came on to IP back in 2000. Thought, wow, this is a great field that seemed like it was something interesting to get into, and hopefully would be useful at some later point, maybe when I decided to retire from IBM. So I spent about 9 years in intellectual property at IBM. Actually, Brian and I were together for quite a bit of that time. And with that, I did a lot of M&A activities, technology licensing. M&A was predominantly IP related, and obviously patent licensing, some patent brokering, setting up IBM's patent sale processes, because obviously we were looking to monetize in different ways. And then in 2008, I had an opportunity to go to Nokia, a little change from the IBM environment to the mobile space, which in a lot of respects was completely different. You've got the standards and standards patent licensing activities. And then after 4 years at Nokia, my position was transferred back to Finland. So I had global responsibility for patent licensing at Nokia. I decided to go out on my own. I had an opportunity for several clients, which I'm still involved with, to do licensing and licensing programs. And right now we provide services for individual inventors who are trying to sell their patents, investors that are maybe looking for opportunities where patent licensing programs or patent portfolios. I still have relationships with a lot of large Fortune 50 companies that I continue to work with. And then I have some small companies that have portfolios where the original inventors are still there, and obviously they're looking to monetize their portfolio.
Great, thank you. Brian.
Yeah, so my name's Brian Hinman, and I haven't actually told this story in a long time, but I was an Air Force pilot. I got out of the Air Force and I worked for Westinghouse as an engineer, which was where I got my education. And I was there and bored to death as an engineer. I knew I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. So they were forming a new division called the Economic Development Division. This is where they do all their research down in Augusta, Georgia. And so I went into the president of that then division that was just launching, and I said, listen, you guys are, I had done a little research on patents, and of course companies like IBM were starting to do stuff with that. This is the early 90s. And so I said, I think you're sitting on a hotbed of intellectual property you can make money off of through licensing. So give me a chance. Give me 6 months, give me a couple of patent attorneys, some engineers, and let me try and make some money for you. And if it's successful, then we can start a program. If not, you can put me back in my boring engineering job, or you can lay me off, or whatever you want to do with me. And the guy said, okay, it's risk-free for me. So he allowed me 6 months basically to do that. And I made him about $10 or $15 million in doing some quick licensing. And the rest of it, that was the start of and the birth of Westinghouse's licensing program. So it was a risk I took. But it was a calculated risk because I think it was one that I was ready to take at the time. IBM saw what I was doing, and I did that for Westinghouse for 4 years. IBM saw what I was doing, recruited me to come up to IBM, and I worked there for 12 years. I eventually took over all of their licensing organization, and it was that was a very interesting. That's where Bob and I worked together, and then I launched a startup, Allied Security Trust. You may have heard of it. It's a patent defensive entity fighting against these patent trolls. And I was the founding CEO of that firm. And then I sold that company, and then I went to Verizon. I ran all of their intellectual property. And then I went to InterDigital. I ran all their intellectual property business. I've subsequently founded a company called Unified Patents, which is another anti-troll sort of an entity. And very recently, within the last 2 years, I moved to Amsterdam and took over Philips, all of Philips' intellectual property and licensing business, which is interesting because I handle all of the prosecution, litigation, offensive and defensive licensing, portfolio buildup and generation. And as an added benefit, which is applicable to this class, I also have up to $10 million I can spend each year in investing however I want, whether it be in startups, portfolios, or whatever, to try and stimulate growth and eventually make money for us. So that makes it rather exciting for me.
Okay, I saw people perk up on that one. Anyone want to move down to the second row? Great, thank you, Brian. Laura.
I'm Laura Sheridan. I'm currently patent counsel at Google. I got my start straight out of engineering school, going to work as a patent agent at a boutique law firm here in New York City. That was when you would work as a patent agent while you went to law school at night. So I was a night student at Fordham, got my law degree while working as a patent agent. After that, I shifted over to general practice firm, where I think that's really at the boutique, I did patent prosecution nonstop, and it was great for years of getting a lot of experience in all issues of prosecution, but I moved to general practice because I wanted to get more experience. So at the firm, I was doing pretty much everything patent related, still prosecution, but also litigation and diligence. And what was becoming more popular at the time, this is years ago, but it was the challenge practice at the patent office. Very different than it is now, and you may have talked about it a little bit, but it was starting to grow, and I worked both from the perspective of defending patent challenges, so this is once you have an issued patent and someone is challenging it before the patent office, both defending and bringing them. And I started to get very interested in it, which I'll get to in a minute with where I am now. And from the general practice firm, I came to Google almost 4 years ago. I work out of New York City. We have a small group of patent lawyers here, but the main office is out in Mountain View. At Google, I have 2 hats. They're very different, but I wear both of them just because you can kind of do that if you beg enough, if you work hard enough. So the first hat is a team called the Competitive Analysis Team. And that team is responsible for providing intelligence to team members so that they can make informed decisions. So I manage a team of analysts who provide information by analyzing small and large data sets so that you can make strategic decisions around things like prosecution, licensing, and litigation. So you're doing it with information. What I think is really cool about our competitive analysis team is that we get to use a mix of external tools. So we have a lot of the tools that I'm sure the folks here use as well for their work. But when external tools don't work for us, we build our own. So we have homegrown solutions that sort of fill the gaps in what we believe is the analysis that we need to do our jobs. The other hat that I wear is policy. It's been very busy lately. My focus is really on the patent office side of things, so improving patent quality, both pre and post issuance. So again, the post issuance piece, that goes back to my interest in those challenges from the general practice firm, but now there are new proceedings in place, which you've probably talked about under the America Invents Act. We have something called inter partes review and covered business method review, and I'm very passionate about these proceedings simply because they're such an efficient alternative to the litigation process. You can take the decision of validity out of the courts. The other side is the pre-issuance side. At the patent office, there's a lot of work to be done to improve patent quality. So a lot of what I do focuses on a number of issues, prior art, so that's all the stuff that came before, making it more available, making it more efficient to search for it. Google has its own search tool, which maybe we'll talk about a bit. And issues like the examination process, making sure It's emphasizing quality over quantity. We see a lot of patents issuing out of the office. We just want to make sure there's an emphasis on the quality of those. So a lot of my work involves issues around that as well.
Got it. Thank you. Dan.
Dan Abraham. I'm a physicist. I was trained as a physicist. I've been doing nanotechnology research for a number of years at places like IBM and AT&T. And as I was sort of getting tired of more fundamental research, I moved into applied research and then founded a nanotechnology company in California some years ago that was acquired and moved into more of a position of M&A and running R&D for a larger organization, which involved analysis of IP and possible acquisitions, so that I became interested in really more the business side of things. And since that time, I've been really more on the business development side of R&D, and spent some time at GE as Dr. Evil, so in GE licensing, GE has a corporate function where they sort of manage and curate the very large GE patent portfolio, and there I was mostly focused on identifying inventions and areas of innovation that would be suitable for more of an open innovation model. And GE has been moving in that direction over the years, and so we did that. And then after GE, I was here at Columbia for a number of years, working with Oren, and I see a few of my former colleagues in the group. I'm so happy to see you. And we had a lot of fun here. Columbia is a great place with a lot of unique and really forward-looking innovation. And I left Columbia a few years ago to join MPEG LA as a science and strategy person to look at possible patent pools outside of standards-based patent pools, which is what they've done traditionally. So we look at choke points in markets and try to see if there's a patent pool-based solution around that.